Right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. To all those that have been here before, welcome. To those that are new and still checking for the first time, I'd like to welcome you too. So I've been running a couple of these talks every morning for the last 4 or 5 days or so. Yeah, we've been covering everything from living in this lockdown and how do we survive the hurricane, and in fact, how do we begin thriving. And then we've decided to extend those two talks into a whole series of talks on self-awareness, because everything starts with ourselves. And if we're not self-aware, we will be constantly blaming the outside world, etc., for everything that's going on in our lives. And I think the big point of my talk is how do we take control back of our lives, and how do we start taking control over what we can control. So today, like I said to morning Ingela checking in there from Mauritius. Hi Rain, stalwart, welcome. So we're going to be covering a couple of the slides again, because like I said, there's a lot of new people that have been joining since those first initial sessions. So I'm going to be covering a lot of the stuff, well, not a lot of the stuff, but some of the slides are going to be again repeated. So just bear with me, those that have seen some of these slides, but it's important. And after these first 1 or 2 sessions, we'll go into a whole lot of new slides. This complete presentation has about 910 slides in total. So yesterday we ended on this slide, and I left you with a question or a challenge to say to yourselves, how often do we simply sit and think about what we're thinking about? How often do we ever stop and check in with ourselves? I think this lockdown has certainly forced a lot of people to slow down and check in with themselves. I think people can remain busy for a certain amount of time, and after that they suddenly have to start checking in with their thoughts and their feelings. And I think that can be quite a daunting task. So or quite challenging for many people. So today we're going to I think the very next slide is going to speak to that, and it's quite a challenging slide, and we'll move into that then. Another thing I wanted to try and do today is to see, I realized I'm so used to talking in front of live audiences, and I'm not used to talking in front of a virtual audience, and I realized there's a 10 to 15 second lag between what I'm saying here and it arriving on your laptop. So I'm going to see if we can, when I ask questions, I'm going to see if there can be some feedback. Hi, Bob's checking in from Scotland. Hi there. Also, Stalwart, been joining all the sessions. So I'm going to see if we can, when I ask a question, I'm going to just wait 10, 15 seconds on my side, which is always very strange for me. And if you want to just type in some of your answers, we can at least start having an interaction as a group, I think. Let's just see how it goes. If it doesn't work, then we'll just carry on winging it. I'm quite happy with that. So this question, is again, it's going to go straight into my next slide, which is a challenging slide. And I'd like to ask some of you this question. When last did you take a bath? Why and why not? And I'm not asking when last did you shower? When last did you wash? I'm asking when last did you have a bath? When last did you relax in a bath? And I think just if you are there, just type and let's just see how it goes. I just want to see if there is some feedback to this question and how the feedback works. So I'm sure it's quite a long time ago. And for many of us, some people say they bath regularly. I had one chap that I worked with once upon a time that said he baths for 20 to 30 minutes. And I could never understand this, because for me it was quite interesting in that he had come to me with panic attacks and a lot of anxiety, and yet said he was bathing for 20 or 30 minutes. When I asked him how was he managing that, because this seemed quite surprising, he said that he reads, or he goes onto Facebook, or he watches YouTube when he's lying in the bath. But when I've run this question to groups, like some of the people are saying that they don't like to lie in their dirt. Other people say there's just no time for a bath. People have often said to me, obviously there's water restrictions in South Africa, or certainly in Port Elizabeth, so they haven't bathed because of the water restrictions. And it's boring is another one. Some people have said it's just boring. They cannot sit still for 20 minutes in a bath. One of the things I like to challenge people is, and then I'll get the audience to put up their hands, and we normally end up with hardly anyone with their hand up. Once I get down to who sits in the bath for 20 minutes with nothing else other than themselves just lying in the bath. And virtually no one. Everyone needs some sort of activity to keep them busy. And the reason we do this is we end up running away from our thoughts. The minute we start thinking something, or the minute we start feeling something, we respond to it. So we might be lying in the bath and feel guilty because there's dishes to wash, or a house to clean, or people to feed, or this is lazy people are doing this. So we end up jumping out the bath. And I often say to people, if someone else walked into the bathroom and said, hey, get out of the bath and go wash the dishes, would you do it? And I'm sure not, because most of us have got strong minds and strong-willed. And we would tell them to take a long walk on a short pier. So essentially, our heads are telling us to get out the bath. Our heads are telling us this is for lazy people to lie in a bath, or giving you the guilt trips. And we need to overcome this. So a big part of this series of talks is how do we overcome being a slave to our minds? How do we take control of our lives? Okay, so at the end of the session, I'm going to challenge you guys to take a bath. Hopefully you've saved up enough water that you can at least run a bath. And if you don't have water restrictions, then take a bath. I say to people, I don't mind if you have a candle there that's burning that you want to stare at, or a glass of wine even if you drink. Just not reading or taking your mind out of the bath, and to see whether you can stay in that bath for 20 minutes, not just physically, but mentally as well. Just your thoughts and your feelings. I'm happy that it can be a sensory experience, so you can put smelly stuff in the bath, you can put bubbles in, you can put lavender in, and the candle's there. That's why I say the wine is fine, or a glass of whiskey, and just see if you can take this challenge on. But yeah, see how it goes, and you're welcome to inbox me how that worked for you. So Calvin and Hobbes is a classic little cartoon, and this one says, we're so busy watching out for what's ahead of us that we don't take time to enjoy where we are. Often when I talk to people about this bathing story, I had one chap that said to me, and it's amazing how anxious people get when I say to them they need to bath before I see them again. It's as though they've got to climb Mount Everest. The one chap said to me, well, I said, how did it go? He said, well, I lay in the bath. I thought about yesterday. I thought about what I did today. I thought about what I got to do tomorrow. And then I started getting bored, so I got out. Not for 1 minute was he able to enjoy just being there, just being in the bath and enjoying the moment, literally with himself. And so many of us struggle with that. And I think this lockdown is almost forcing us to spend time with ourselves, especially those that don't have family around them and are left alone. So this has been covered in those first two sessions, so I'm going to go through it briefly, but I don't want to go too briefly because many people haven't seen it. So if you have seen it, it'll just be like a refresher. It's a slightly older slide. In psychology, we talk about internal and external locus of control, and it was extremely important just to repeat this so that people understand what we do have control over, because so many of us are trying to control what we can't control. So Stephen Covey speaks about our circle of concern or influence. Okay. Outside that circle of concern, there's things that we shouldn't worry about, okay? Or they should concern us, but we shouldn't lose sleep over it. Inside our circle of concern should be everything else. Bosses, friends, family, extended family, children, etc. This COVID virus that we're sitting with. Inside of that circle of influence inside that circle of concern is our circle of influence. We should be standing right inside our circle of influence. However, most of us, because of our external locus of control, we end up standing outside that circle of influence and trying to control what we can't control. When that happens, the environment crushes our circle of influence into a really tiny bubble that we feel hopeless, powerless, helpless, confused, and literally out of control. So we need to get back into our circle of influence. This is a new slide which wasn't in the previous presentation. When we are not inside our circle of influence, we sit here inside a system, all right? And in this system, we operate together with other people. Now, often those other people could be causing a lot of conflict for us, or we think it's them that's causing the conflict. And because of this interaction within the system, nothing in a system cannot affect the other things in the system. Everything in a system affects each other within the system. So if you or someone in your family is sitting in the system, you would be going through this situation. And often the people would like the person that's causing the conflict to go see a psychologist, or, because we always blame everyone else. Or we want to change that person. And the challenge is, can we change other people? And the answer is no, we cannot change. But every single one of us tries to change other people. We're constantly trying to change the other person. And then when I speak to groups, I often say to these groups, like to this group today, is we cannot change other people, but we can. And there's only one way we can change other people. And like I said, this lag is a tremendous obstacle in a discussion. But the only way we can change other people is literally to work on ourselves. That doesn't mean that the other person's right. Doesn't mean that you're wrong. But if you change the way you're reacting to that person, It's almost like in a bullying situation. If a bully is bullying you and you keep on acting in a certain way, the bully is going to keep bullying you. So until you change your behavior, that bully will not change. So we have to change ourselves. And this brings us back to, what can we control? We cannot control the other person. And force is only going to ever be a short period of time anyway. And that's not going to change the person. So we were talking about getting back into our circle of influence. And when we stand inside the center of our circle of influence and push outwards, our circle grows bigger. Inside that circle of influence is our circle of power, or our circle of control. These are the only 4 things that we actually have control over: our thoughts and our emotion, our words and our actions. Today we're going to speak a little bit about thoughts and words, I think in some of the future slides. But once we start spending a lot of time being reactive to the external world, so we start blaming other people for our feelings, saying so-and-so makes me angry, spending a whole lot of time being reactive, spending sleepless nights thinking about our conversations we had or what someone said to me, this leaks a lot of power away from your core. And it's power and energy that you could be using elsewhere to make a whole lot of differences in your own world and others, actually. So, So we have to surround the circle of power or control with, we can circle it with willpower or mindfulness. Mindfulness is a more current, more contemporary buzzword that one can use when it comes to how do we start protecting these areas of our lives. So now I want to just quickly jump into words. We said we're going to talk about language. We cannot reverse the suffering caused by language, but we can cultivate our skill at putting on and taking off aspects of human language to decrease our suffering. Language, I guess, was initially created in order to improve our lives, to help us to transmit knowledge. Before that, we probably would have been beating our chests or drawing on cave walls, explaining to our children how to go and hunt woolly mammoths. But language made it a lot easier. And certainly once language became, we had the lingua franca, it became a lot easier to spread across the world, knowledge across the world. Language, though, however, has also made us, or dumbed us down in many ways. So language forms a big part because we think in our languages, etc. So words, we're going to talk a little bit about words now. What comes out of our mouth affects us. So we have to be very, very careful of how we put on and take off aspects of human language. And I'm going to go into that now. This is a very interesting slide. And one can put up any sort of words. And I can put up emotionally charged words as well. But I'd like to ask the group, what does this word say? What is standing in front of you? And the word is milk. Okay, we all see the word milk. But now the challenge is, what springs to mind? If we did a brainstorming session now and asked you what springs to mind when you hear this word, what pictures, what images flows into your thought processes? And different things come up. Things like white, creamy, chocolate, cow, post toasties, yogurt, butter, calcium, bones, babies, cow's udders. At some point, someone in the group always says boobs, and there's normally a clown somewhere in the group that shouts out boobs. So milk, to many people, the minute you hear this word milk, it conjures up a whole lot of images in our minds. But does milk mean all this thing? Does it mean grass? Does it mean cow? Does it mean chocolate steri stumpy? If you go look in the Oxford Dictionary, milk's definition is an opaque white fluid rich in fat and protein secreted by female mammals to feed their young. That is what milk means. It doesn't mean cow, butter, cream, white, calcium, bones, osteoporosis. We could make all these associations as our brain goes down these different neural pathways. But milk is if you've got a young child, you would remember phonics, or many of you remember spelling from school. It consists of these letters, M, I, L, K. M, I, L, K. These words together sound like this word milk, and then milk goes and makes a whole lot of images, like I said, in our mind. However, this word milk, if we say it fast, and a good exercise is just for me to say it for 10 seconds for you. Milk, 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 milk. Eventually, it ends up being this arbitrary sound. So these arbitrary sounds, and every single word is made up of this. It doesn't matter what the word is. And I'm a bit afraid to put some emotionally charged words up here, but they are essentially words or sounds that go into our brain. Our brain then reworks these words into something from our past experience, and then this word then means that to us, but it doesn't. It is just a sound that our brain interprets into something else. So be careful of how we put on and take off words. and just to be aware of our judgments around these certain words. Now I want you to go and think how important this list of the following words are to you. These words we cannot avoid. These words come up regularly in our diction, regularly in the way we think, regularly in the way we judge others. So how important and how often do these words come up for you? Do they come up very often? Do they come up often? Or do they never come up for you? Always. Impossible. Must. Wrong. But. Can't. Right. Never. Should. Have to. Shouldn't. Not fair. And I'd hypothesize that for everyone watching this presentation today, these words come up regularly, because for myself, we use these words very, very often. My next question then is, do you think these words have a positive influence over your life or a negative influence over your life? When I've asked this question, the answer often comes back positive or negative, depending on the context. And that's a great starting point, and I don't process it much further then, but people often feel that there are positive aspects to these words and there are negative aspects to the word. Then the next question I like to ask to the group is, are these words, or do these words make you more flexible or less flexible? Do these words make you feel more flexible or less flexible? And generally the answer comes back less flexible, okay? Which is a much better word than saying rigid, all right? Because no one wants to be called rigid. But these words definitely make us less flexible. Then the next challenge would be, do these words increase your vitality? Do they give you energy, or do they take energy away? And obviously, if the words are more rigid, they take energy away. Despite the fact that many people say words like must and have to give them energy, I would like to challenge that and say that they don't really give you energy. It puts you into a feeling of being powerless, that I have to do something. So one way we can work with these words, because like I said, we cannot avoid these words. These words are just part of living. We cannot avoid them. But we can hold on to these words less tightly, because one of the things with these words is that they limit our freedom to choose. These words limit our freedom to choose. They take away our choice. They take away our ability to make a decision in our life. And we feel, again, powerless to these words. Now, remember, these words are not just coming from an external source. Many of us are thinking these words daily. I can't do that. I can't have a bath right now. I'm not allowed to have a bath. There's water restrictions, or I feel guilty if I did this. So we have these words going around our head, and these judgments can all be based on how we grew up in our social programming. So be careful how these words impact your life. And again, we're going to talk later on in the series, in the next few sessions, about thought fusion and fusing with our thoughts and emotions. And if you are fused with your thoughts, you will listen to these words as though you are a zombie, as though you are just a slave to your brain. So I'm trying to help you to get past being a slave to your brain. So these words take away your ability to choose, and they're extremely limiting. So we call these words word prisons. I can't go through every one of these words now and explain how you can sort of change these words, but we could use a word like but. Yes, but. The minute you put but into a sentence, you put an extremely powerful obstacle in the way from allowing yourself to move on to the next level of that sentence. So one of the examples might be, I love my partner, but they drive me crazy. I love my partner, but they drive me crazy. Now, if you say I love my partner, but they drive me crazy, it's impossible to love your partner unconditionally. But if you replaced but with and, and said, I love my partner and they drive me crazy, now you can love your partner, warts and all, with their craziness. So it's the same with me doing these presentations. The first time I did my Facebook presentation, I literally learned the night before how to use OBS software, how to try and do my PowerPoint with Facebook, and there's about 4 or 5 screens in front of me. It was extremely daunting, and I almost, that night, I had a few thoughts, should I do this thing? I haven't really prepared it, I haven't planned it. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. Of course, I'm feeling anxious. It's quite normal to feel anxious. So instead of saying, I want to do Facebook presentations, but I'm too anxious, I said to myself, I want to do Facebook presentations and I'm anxious. So that allowed me to do the presentation with my anxiety. It's like that every single time before I start my session. It's normally quite anxious. There's a whole lot going on. I've got 2 young boys. So there's quite a bit going on. Getting the dogs out the room because they're here, because they're a distraction. But I still go ahead with it. So I go ahead with my anxiety. Then another good example is, or a challenge for you is to go write out a whole list of all your shoulds. I should go to gym. I should be eating better. I should be exercising every day. I should be tidying my house. Another thing about these words is there's no movement in these words. There's absolutely zero movement in these words. So you could create a list of all the shoulds in your life, then go and cross that out and write, if I really wanted to, I could. So this idea about not being able to bath or anything because you should be washing the dishes has got nothing to do with it. If you really wanted to, you could go and bath and make that decision about bathing. So I just want to go into the nature of thoughts. So we talk about thoughts in many different ways. So this question of am I my thoughts? One of these, the first line we spoke about right in the beginning was am I my thoughts? And we have to ask this question, if I'm my thoughts. And to cut a long story short, and we will uncover this in the subsequent sessions, I am not my thoughts. I am Greg. My thoughts reside in my head. My thoughts come up, and I am not my thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. And I think by the end of this series, the line, thoughts are just thoughts and feelings are just feelings, is going to become an anthem or a mantra for you. But I'm not my thoughts. We cannot hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. So you cannot be a loser and a winner. One of those thoughts is going to be more dominant. And I think as we discussed in our first session about that subconscious level with the iceberg, the conscious versus the subconscious is a lot bigger. So if at a conscious level you're saying, I am a winner, at an unconscious level, that voice is shouting a whole lot louder that you're a loser. So we have to be careful about which of these opposing thoughts am I holding at the same time, because I can only hold one of them. Then our body doesn't understand the difference between reality and imagination. Our body does not understand the difference between reality and imagination. And there's a number of examples to show that. If you're lying in the bed and you hear a noise outside, and you think if your brain just says, oh, it's a burglar or a criminal trying to break in, you are going to have heart palpitations, you're going to get shaky, you're going to freak out, you're going to say, dial 911. If you start thinking about eating a lemon, you might start salivating. So there's a number of ways that I could prove this to you. But just remind yourself that your body doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. So we also spoke in yesterday's session, which if you haven't checked in yesterday, you can go view it on my Facebook page. We need bouncers, we need doormen at our mental party, because if we don't, and we don't listen in or check in with what we're thinking, our body's going to constantly be responding to the fact that we are under stress or under attack or under pressure. So it's extremely important to make sure that we are monitoring what is happening inside our heads. We call these sticky thoughts. A number of these thoughts can come past, and I've had many people come and visit me in my practice with ideas of these sticky thoughts. They might have had just a fleeting thought that just passed them, and now they're questioning it because this thought, whether it could be my relationship is terrible, and then they just latch onto that thought and they can't let go of it and believe that thought not to be true. And we will talk about thought fusion later on in another session. In Thailand, they trap monkeys. They train monkeys to go and pull coconuts off trees. And it's quite an interesting and I want to say a humane way, the way they trap the monkeys. They literally just put a box against a tree with some sweets or a banana or something inside the trap. And then the monkey put a little bit of a hole in the box. The monkey comes along, puts its hand into the box, grabs onto the banana or the sweet or whatever the treat is, and can't pull it out because it's made a fist over this sweet, and it cannot now get its hand out. And the monkey's too dumb to let go of the fruit so that it can get out. And that's how they trap monkeys. We are no different. We are no different to this monkey that gets trapped by grabbing onto something. When a thought or an emotion comes past us, we over-identify with that thought, we fuse with it, we grab onto it, and a thought and a feeling does not have hooks, yet we give them hooks by grabbing on and not letting go. So it's extremely important to just be aware of how we entrapping ourselves with our thinking and our feelings. Got about 5 minutes to go in this session. So I'm going to use this as an example of like say you were lying in your bath and you got this instruction, I must go wash the dishes. I want you to please follow the next instruction and follow it to the T. Do exactly what this next instruction says. Do not think of your kitchens at home. Do not think of your kitchens at home. The minute we hear this thought, or the minute we think this thought, it's impossible not to think of your kitchens at home. It's impossible not to think of your kitchens at home. And I've done quite a few hypnosis courses, and one of the courses they taught us that the brain can't hear this word do not. the instruction it hears is do think of your kitchen at home. It does not hear the word not. So the example is if you were sending your child in, if you went on a lockdown to go and get some milk from the shop, and you send him inside, so please buy bread and do not forget to buy the milk. The instruction he gets is do forget to buy the milk. So we've got to be very careful how we speak and how we think. And this, in a similar way, I must not be anxious is going to make you more anxious. The more you say I must not be anxious, the brain is hearing I must be anxious. So we need to stop. It's much more powerful to say I am calm, okay, than do not be anxious or do not be sad or do not be confused. It's much more constructive to use the positive. So we have to realize that the mind is a don't get eaten machine, which is sometimes useful. So if we're running away from a lion, we would need this ability to survive. But if we're doing a talk or a presentation in front of a group of people, public speaking is one of the biggest fears, if not the first, it might be the first or second biggest fear that people have, because we all fear judgment. We fear people saying, oh, that was a lot of nonsense. But the audience is not a bunch of lions. It's just a bunch of people. All right. So this is a lovely slide which speaks to our perceptions, where we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We do not see things as they are. Okay? So am I a little cat thinking I'm this ferocious lion, or am I a ferocious lion thinking I'm a cat? So we have to be careful what is going on inside our minds. And thoughts about life are not equivalent to life. Sometimes our mind tells us that a mouse is a monster. Okay? And perception really does cloud our reality. This is a lovely slide with two people standing on two different sides. One guy sees 4 there, if he counts. The other guy, from his perspective, sees 3. And guess what? They are both right. That slide I showed just now on word prisons, right and wrong. I'm watching these Facebook groups, the WhatsApp groups through this lockdown, and we have these arguments where each person thinks they're right, but each person's got their perspective. So the question is, who is right? And depending on which perspective you're looking at, both parties are right, unless it's a fact, okay, and not an opinion. And that's for another discussion where we maybe speak about conflict one day. But too many of us argue opinions, and we don't argue fact. This is a lovely little slide, also just about perception and clouding reality and conflict. And the question is, which way is this window facing? Is it facing to the left? Is it facing to the right? Does the window open inwards, or does the window open outwards? And again, there's a number of different ways of looking at this window. And this is just a quick optical illusion. And it could be of two things. It could be of a Native American or a Eskimo going into his igloo with, it looks like a fish under his right arm. You're seeing him from the back going into his igloo. But a few more slides just before I want to end this segment. So we must remember that, like that slide about the mouse, thoughts about life are not equivalent to life. And this is what an outsider would see. If you were freaking out about a mouse or a cockroach, this is what an outside person would see. And this is the last slide for today. This is the most powerful slide I think that I could share with you, probably in your life. As a coach and a psychologist, we are constantly challenged with helping people move beyond their limiting beliefs. Okay? Beyond their limiting beliefs. We are prisoners of our own perceptions. We are prisoners of our own perceptions. I often ask people, who is your jailer? And ultimately, we've got to admit that I am my jailer. I am my jailer. All right? And I remember I saw a meme on Facebook just the other day, and it said, the key to the door to hell is in the lock, and it's on the inside. Because many people find themselves in their personal hells, and the key's in the door. You have to just unlock the door and walk out of it. So this guy trapped behind his bars of not good enough, too insecure, should, must, I'm bad, or I'm unworthy. If a dog had to come walking past, what do you think that dog would see? This is what the dog would see. The dog would come up wagging his tail, thinking here's a guy to play, and this guy sitting trapped behind his illusory, the illusion of bars that's in front of him. Okay. I'm going to stop there on that slide and say thank you very much for joining me. Again, I'm happy to, I really love reading your comments. If you've got any questions, you can private message me or inbox me if they're private, but I appreciate your comments. Tomorrow, I won't be at 9 o'clock. I think I might present in the afternoon. Just watch my Facebook page for the link, but it won't be at 9 o'clock. Like I said, the Easter bunnies are coming around, and I've got 2 young boys. So we've got to set that up, but I would more than likely be presenting in the afternoon. So you're welcome to join me. If not, there would be a link to the video on my Facebook page. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day and a lovely Easter with your families.